So we're just jumping on, and I see that we have tons and tons of educators in the room. Let us know not only where you guys are tuning in from, but also if you're an educator, if you're a design educator, if you're an educator in the art field, let us know. And maybe if you want to, just tell us where you're teaching to. It's up to you. So my name is Rachel Elner. I'm not only a producer here at Type Ed, but also an educator at Cal State Los Angeles in the graphic design department. I'm joined with Abby Guido. She is an assistant professor at the, this is long, Tyler School of Art, Graphic and Interactive Design Department in Temple University. Wow, that's a long one. Okay. So guys, let us know. If you're an educator, let us know what you are teaching people and where you are. Okay, so great. Haley is design educator from Mississippi, and then Mac from Connecticut. Awesome. Sandy is tutoring in InDesign, awesome, to non-designers. And then Christine Cortina, she works with me at Cal State LA. Victoria is a type designer in Portugal. Sam from Philadelphia. Oh, we got some Philly people in the house, guys. Do you know these guys? Do you know Sam and Ella and Jen and Alex? Okay.
Some of our students want to see what we have to say about them. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna be gossiping today.
And Anne is an alum, so that's
awesome.
An alum too.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, so Anna's an alum and she's teaching web design at the University of Texas, El Paso. Joshua is graphic designer from Stanford University. Awesome. This is great. I'm just going to scroll up a bit. And so we have Roland and then Tia's here from Indiana. And let's see, who else? Alejandra from Mexico, and then Peter from Western Massachusetts. We got people from everywhere. Shannon from Canada, and Tracy from Bismarck. So it's great to see everyone. So again, if you are an educator, let us know where you are teaching. Also, if you can do us a favor and share out the URL that you see above and let everyone know that we're getting started. We figured we would just focus on design education since we're off for summer. So why not, right? Not only joined here by Abby Guido, but also two of her recent students, the recent graduates, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So Marissa and Jackie, hello, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us this morning today.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's morning here in LA. Where are you guys?
We're in Philly too. So it's 1 o'clock here. Okay. Lunchtime for us.
Lunchtime. Excellent. Oh, Jamie is on. He teaches at LCAD and SoCal. And then Barbara, a Tyler alum from Santa Monica. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to talk to Abby for a little bit. I'm going to ask the students to be on mute for a bit. We're going to talk a little bit about education. So I figure we set aside an hour and talk about design education. For me, I'm always interested in how type is best taught and also best learned in the same manner. Typography, when we're teaching at Cal State LA, is a very difficult subject. I'm sure it is for most teachers and most students as well, to learn the finesse of type. And I've always heard, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Abby, is that when you're judging all sorts of like contests, or you're looking at student work, you can tell the difference between those who have strong type skills and those who do not.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell my students that's really what separates the good designers from the great. Like, I go right away and look at the type because that tells you really the most, I think.
Right. And I just did a portfolio review, and that was the first thing that you notice is like, oh, well, the type is a little bit squished, or, the headlines look great, but the body copy you gave up on. How do you, so what I want to talk to you about today is like, how do you teach that in a limited program, whether it's 2 years or 4 years or whatnot? So that's what we're going to cover today. All right. So, Abby, how important is typography in the graphic and interactive department there at Tyler?
It's extremely important to us. It's something that we all value very greatly. We, you know, from everything from full-time, of course, type is important, but even all of our adjuncts, like many universities, and I'm sure many of my design educator friends out there know, you know, we rely on adjuncts quite a bit for a lot of courses. But for us, when we're hiring adjuncts, they have to have the same, you know, opinion and hold the same, you know, value to type as we do. And that's really across the board. For us, it's for our illustration professors, it's for our web design professors. For everyone, we always say, you know, can they work with type? Because while I think sometimes you can be an art director of some things, some arts, and not know how to do it yourself, I think type is very specific and you have to be an expert yourself.
Got it. Okay. And then can you tell me a little bit about the Tyler program?
Sure.
How is it implemented? What are the requirements? What are the electives?
Sure. So our students, the first year that they're a BFA student, they're in a foundation program. And so we don't get to see them in our department. We see them the first time as a sophomore. They have 2 required classes they have to take. When they finish these courses, they actually have to apply to get into the major. So those 2 courses, they put together a portfolio of the same work. So no matter which class section you have, you're doing the same projects, so that we get to see how those projects compare. I like how my students are on here mocking me. You might have to hide them. That's what you get for inviting your students onto a webcast. Oh my God. They're probably Instagramming me right now.
Oh my gosh.
But and that gets carried through this idea of all the students. While we want to leave room for instructors to customize a class, we also try to keep a very consistent curriculum across different sections of the same course, because we do want to make sure our students all get the same skills. So as a sophomore, you know, they're just learning really what design is. And in that first class they take, we just work with words. So we have one project where we do some kind of illustrative type. So we start kind of introducing the idea of the importance of type. We have a corporate identity project in that class too, and we start talking about systems and hierarchy. It's not until they're a junior where they take their first type 1 class. That course was designed by Kelly Houlihan, who's one of my colleagues. And the course, I would say it's probably our strictest course curriculum-wise, where we really stay to what the syllabi, you know, what it says. We only have full-time faculty teaching that class because it's such a demanding class. It takes so much of your time that we don't know if it's fair for an adjunct to actually teach it because there is so much feedback needed. It's a class that relies heavily on exercises. We read Ellen Lupton's Thinking with Type book, and we do exercises. It allows the students plenty of time to make mistakes, to fail, to learn from them, and quickly move on. So they're not trying to create any type of portfolio work in those exercises. They're just trying to learn the basics.
Got it. Okay.
I can go on and on.
Yeah. So, okay. A lot of times, I mean, the typography that needs to be covered for me is everything from characters to words, sentence, paragraphs, full pages, type systems, right? So where is that covered within the program?
So that type 1 class, if you're familiar with Thinking with Type, you know, Ellen starts with letters, goes to words, and goes to full body copy. And we kind of follow that structure in that class. And I would say that's the class where they get everything, but it's not overlooked in any of our other courses. So pretty much in every class they take in our design department, type is important, type is covered. There's even our illustration classes. Oftentimes, you know, if the students, we had Mikey Burden teaching last year, you know, he did illustrations, but for chocolate bars, and they still had to deal with the system of type. So for us, we put it everywhere we can because we know how important it is.
And some of the alums that have come out of the school are very illustrative focused. You know, they do a lot of illustration or illustrative type. Is that something that is focused on in the department?
Yeah, we are very big on image making. When we first teach software, which is the other class you take as a sophomore, we teach the software from from image making. So they learn how to use Photoshop, they learn how to use Illustrator by doing different types of image making assignments. And so I think that that's where that kind of legacy comes from. Something that I would say the Tyler portfolios have had forever. I'm an alum myself, and I can remember, it was always like that. And I don't know if it's that the students come from their BFA, their 1-year foundations, where that's what they're doing. They're spending a lot of time working with material and exploring image making, and it kind of just leads right into design. And then on the flip side, a lot of the students that, come out are also doing a lot of illustrative type. And I think that just comes from us kind of focusing on the image making and the software training.
And are the graphic design students also learning illustration?
It's not required, but I would say that a lot of the work is very illustrative, but it's not. How
does that happen? How does that happen? Is there an influence from the instructors, or?
Sure, we show. I would say we show equal amount of design work as we do illustration work, and I would say the projects, we push for creating your own art, and it might be more photographic illustrations, or it might be more hand-on, more vector, but we definitely push to, get your hands on every part of your project. And even if you're finding art to include, how do you customize it and make it feel special?
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So also, are there classes on expressive lettering and illustrative lettering and just typesetting and letterpress, or what is it cover?
No. So we have an advanced type class as well, which, focuses on laying out larger bodies of copy. We have a new class this semester coming up where we're designing a typeface, but I know someone had one of those questions I saw before was, do you teach calligraphy? We don't. We just all value type so highly that we spend a lot of time in our critiques kind of getting down and dirty and looking at everything and talking about every rag and every extra space and all use the same language. They kind of get it drilled into them from very early on how important type is. Mm-hmm. It's something else that a lot of our students do is a lot of them create their own content. And that's something that I think about too when I'm teaching type is that, I'm not a huge fan of using dummy copy because I feel like then it gives you the ability to just take out these few letters and that's going to fix that rag. And then it's not real. And so when you create your own content, you kind of, it's yours and you want to include it. You also learn okay, when I'm going to write a headline, if there's going to be a series of headlines, they all should be around the same length or it's going to be really hard to design for this system.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And doing that yourself, you kind of, those things. And so
do the students have to take a creative writing class?
No, and some of them embrace it and love it. And some of them, are not happy about it. And, but I think that as professional designers, we all know that you have to have that hat on sometimes. Mm-hmm. And even if you're not writing, you're at least editing, you're finding where to take it from and how to kind of bring it all together so it's in the same voice. I would love them to take creative writing classes if you're on. It's great, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. It's part of the creative process for me. I mean, clients come to you and starting a new business, it's great to be part of the naming process, so it's amazing to show your portfolio and be able to say, I named this company, I created the illustrations, I did it all, and I have a strong type system too.
Right. And in your other life outside of teaching, you work on infographics, you have been an annual report designer. So you feel like there's other types of creative endeavors that will help them in their design education to help with, those things, like whether it is creating infographics or
Sure. I mean, when I think about it, I was thinking about our conversation today and why type is so important. And when I fell in love with design, it was because it gave me a way to communicate. And I started thinking about the image versus type. And while an image can pull someone in, the type is really what's going to communicate our messages. And so there's just no way to me being a designer and not being great at type, because you can create this amazing visual that pulls someone in. But if someone isn't able to figure out the information you're trying to share with them, if there's not that strong system, if they get lost in it and it makes them walk away, then you're not doing your job and you're not communicating. Right. And that's in infographics, it's in annual reports, it's in it all.
Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is pull the students on, or since they're just dying to talk to us.
To mock me?
But one second. So I want to just answer this one question from Peter. I know that he was asking, do you incorporate calligraphy or hand lettering into your classroom? Is there none of the classes that? Well,
so we do have Mary Kate McDevitt, who's one of our alumni, who teaches a senior illustration class for us. And so, and I can't say for sure if she actually assigns and makes them do their own lettering. I know that's what she does in her own work, but I know a lot of the students are inspired by her. So we do see a lot of hand lettering in our student projects. And Rachel, you and I were talking about that because you were like, you saw a lot of that in the portfolios.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I think sometimes the students gravitate towards it at first because type scares them. I mean, type is what scares all of our students. They're always like, I just don't even know where to start. And see, they're shaking their heads, but they're really confident at drawing and they're confident image makers. And I think sometimes that's kind of their start into type, is that they do feel more comfortable creating it by hand. And then it kind of exposes them. And then they realize, okay, I also, you know, I'm not setting this, you know, whole catalog by hand. I have to also learn those other skills.
Right. Okay, good. And then just really quickly, so Nancy was asking, how do you incorporate interactive type?
So, you know, for us, the students, they do start some screen designs as sophomores too. And when you're dealing with design for the screen, there's other rules they have to learn. But for all of our students do print and web work. So I think what happens is they learn those type skills for print, and then they learn the limitations for interactive, but they already know those skills. And it makes it hard sometimes to find interactive instructors, actually, because to have that both those skills is really, it's a lot and it's hard. But again, that goes back to, we just make sure we hire people that, you know, care about type as much as we do.
Right. Okay, so Abby, because of the internet on the girls' side, I can see is kind of going in and out. Can I have you share your screen? And what we're going to do now, guys, Marissa and Jackie are going to talk about their projects. We will unmute them really quickly and just have a quick introduction. So Marissa and Jackie, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Marissa. And
I'm Jackie. Yes.
We actually both just started working at a studio in Philadelphia called Mellow Gold. We're really psyched that they invited us here.
Yeah. Both just graduated. We both are more on that image making side, but also working in with our type to kind of have custom typography with our illustration, which I think we both really struggled with for a long time. Yeah, I would say most of our work is like equally illustration and type based.
Okay, great. So we're gonna take a look at the work. So we'll share Abby's screen, and this is one of the. That's okay. Okay.
There you go.
So is Jackie first?
Yep, this is my work.
Okay.
Abby was talking about that first type class. So this is our main project in that type class. It's making a magazine, mostly a table of contents and a cover for it. And then we had to like design a type-based like mark for the magazine, which we were given the name of. So this was Process Bag. This was my first time working with like type hierarchy, which was really confusing because I had no idea what it was before type. And this project kind of taught you all like the basics, which are really important and that are probably what I get critiqued on the most in the professional world. So it's really good to have like that basis from this class. Just working on like leading and kerning and kind of finding like weird type pairings that actually match well together. So that was a cool project. I kind of like it. I haven't looked at it since my first year, so it's been a long time. Yeah. Then this was a project. This was a rebrand of an actual location. So we got to pick a company and then rebrand it and imagine it however we wanted. So I wanted to go with like a very industrial utilitarian look. So finding typefaces that did that, but also gave it like a more modern feel was pretty difficult. But I ended up going with like a grotesque typeface because they always kind of work. They're like a workforce typeface. And then creating a stationery package and finding like a way to do kind of a type system that would work throughout this whole brand. So I went with this, like,
Spin Laundry Lounge?
Spin Laundry Lounge is a laundromat in Portland, Oregon, and it's a laundromat that has a bar, a restaurant, and obviously laundry in it. So the brand
needs my kind of laundry.
Yeah, it's a cool place. It is real. It actually exists. So everyone should go visit if they're on the West Coast.
Awesome.
It was hard to find like a brand that made sense for these like 3 random things that have never been together before. So yeah, it was just, I didn't want to make it like really normal with the type. So I like flipped some of the letters to like reference that idea of spinning. And then what Abby was the N, it was just kind of the one that could like read easy if you flipped it. Some of the other ones, like it would make the word read a lot weirder. So the N was like the consistent letter that I flipped. And then what Abby was talking about with copywriting, I got to write like all the copy on the packaging. So writing your own copy is kind of fun because it's actually a useful skill in the professional world as well. And then I made signage that would be on the outside. All right. Which is on the right.
Just tell me when to switch.
Okay. Switch. This is my senior thesis. It's called Post. It's a craft cocktail subscription box service. I was a bartender for a while, so I wanted to like bring bartending into my graphic design world. And this was fun because I did a weird type pairing. It was the first time I also worked with outline type because it's kind of trending, the outline type thing. And finding 3 typefaces that worked well together and finding it consistent against packaging. You can go to the next one. And this is what the boxes looked like. So I used copper plate, knickerbockers, I don't know what that actually, how to pronounce it, and then Sackers were my 3 like main typefaces.
And what is Post?
Post is a craft cocktail subscription box. So it's it's eco-friendly, so it's named after like compost and like posts in the postal service. And then for the label, I need to come up with an idea that it would be one label that would work for all the different bottles that come in this box. So finding a type lockup that I could easily interchange, and I use stamps. You can go to the next one for close-ups of it. Yeah, finding a way to use stamps and hole punch the expiration date, and also like have all 3 of these typefaces work well together.
I'm proud of you for thinking about them being, the same label. I think that's a really nice system. Yeah, it wasn't for me. It's not for my class, so I'm allowed to say that.
It's supposed to be very eco-friendly, so finding a way that like one label just works for everything. And then bringing type with image making, which was what I wanted to do with like 90% of my work. And finding a typeface that looks good with my illustration style was always difficult because I didn't want them to conflict each other, and just like finding a way that either the line weight matched the line weight of the illustration, just to make it look cohesive. So when you look at it, you don't think like anything looks funky. And then these were the recipe cards. And then I got to explore some cool, I really love the letters of this typeface, or the numbers of the typeface. So it was fun to like find a way to work them in on a larger scale for these recipe cards. And that's oh. Oh no, you skipped it. It's fine. Okay, so this was This is my only kind of booklet catalog design. Sunduk, who's I think watching, was my teacher for this. So if there's anything bad, you can blame her. This was mostly type-based, and I wanted to do kind of have like the zine feel to the package, so I ended up making a bunch of little badge mock-ups,
Jackie?
that were the summer stage is. It's a musical theater camp for students. It's pretty prestigious. It's actually also a real camp too. So I was tasked with like doing a brand for it, as well as like their catalog design. And yeah, just musical theater. So then on the left is the catalog that I made, and on the right are stickers that were again with those little badge type lockups.
And I'll throw in, since we're talking about education, this is from our advanced type class. So the students are given the prompt that their logo and everything should be very type focused.
Okay. And also really quickly, if you guys have any questions, just throw them into the chat bar about the projects, and I'll ask Jackie as we're going. All right, keep going.
Yes. Okay. So this one, it was really hard. I wanted to tackle the justified type challenge, which is not easy, but since it's advanced type, it's the time to learn it. So just really like working with hyphens and making sure you didn't have weird rivers throughout, and then also pushing myself to give a weird grid mock-up as well, and still making the justified type work. So the paragraph styles where they go into each other. And also working with really small columns, just to like work with layout. I wanted to try something different and weird since it was going in the zine aesthetic. And again, using the justified type in a small column is extremely difficult. And then making another type lockup that would work consistently across all 6 of the programs they offer. So this would it's like a little table grid that has the dates, the duration, and the cost, and it works throughout all 6 programs. And the schedule was pretty long, and I didn't want it to like be boring in its layout. So finding a way to make it still legible, but not just a list with bullet points of all the dates and what you do. And then next is some of my freelance work that are extremely type-based. Since Tyler, I think, taught me type pretty well, I had the opportunity to do a lot of freelance menu and restaurant branding, which are 90% type-based. So this is a local coffee shop in Philly called One Shot. You can go to the next one. And then just finding a way to, again, bring in that type hierarchy that I was taught pretty well, and making nice layouts that are still like legible, easy for a consumer to read, and finding how to like work with type too.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know Sunduk Krebs' work, you should check out SK Design Works. Sunduk is the type master, so. Yep.
He's the queen. And she taught us well. And then this was another menu design. This was really challenging because I had a ton of copy to work with, and I didn't want it to look overwhelming. So you can go to the next one, Abby. As you can see, there's a million things on these menus, but I didn't want it to be like a diner style menu where you had to flip through a bunch of pages. So finding a way to, again, work with a hierarchy and typefaces that worked well together, not go too small that someone can't read it, and learning, because a lot of restaurant owners want you to highlight their most expensive options. So finding a way to like solve that with type and making the highlighted parts where all the most expensive things are.
It's great.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And then this was like the drink menu. So the drink menus would come on top, and it was stacked. Give it color too, and keep that type system.
Okay.
And then this was some type with image. This was for an event, and this is a fictional event that would be in the city. It's an urban summit. Okay. And then this was, again, the illustration, the image making. and then the image making and kind of pairing it with a typeface that matched the style. And I think that's good. And more image making with some type. Yeah, we do a lot of image making, but like finding a typeface that looks good with it is difficult because there's a lot of typefaces that don't work well with certain illustration styles. And yeah, I think that's my whole presentation.
Very nice. Very cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Shall we jump to Marissa's? Do you have it up?
I have it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Tell me, is it up?
Hi,
Hi
how
again.
are you doing, Marissa?
Good. How are you?
So just really quickly, guys, if you're having issues with the sound, maybe refresh. But other than that, I'm not hearing any echo, Anne. So if it's better now, great. And if not, then maybe try to refresh. Okay, Marissa, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So this is probably my most type-intensive project that I did at school. I also did this with Soonduck. Hi, Soonduck. It's a conceptual catalog for a streetwear event featuring female designers from around the globe. So the main issue I had with this project was finding typefaces that paired properly with the clothes that these women are designing. So I broke the catalog into 6 different books, one talking about the history of streetwear, and then 5 on the 5 different designers themselves. We can go to the next slide. And they're identified by shirt tags with the designers' logos on them. But for each book, I wanted to identify a primary typeface that paired well with the intent of the designer as well as the images that they were putting out as their product. So here we have stuff that's really bold and in your face to pair well with this crazy printed garments that this woman designs. And then if you go to the next slide, I also wanted to generate, oops, sorry, you can keep going, a folio system that was interactive in a way. So it acted as type, but it also acted as a pattern and image in itself to pair with the designers. The next one. Yeah, so that's what we see here. Yeah. Just so that it acted as a folio, but then could act as complements to the images and the other type throughout the books. And then for the body copy itself, I picked one typeface to use throughout, just something that was simple and it's actually so universal in how it works throughout the entire catalog. But each designer was so different that I didn't want it to feel the same when you jumped from book to book. So if we move to the next booklet, we'll actually see that this one's a little more structured, a little more geometric, and it complements the leather patchwork that this designer creates.
This is a class project, right, Marissa?
Yeah, this was an advanced type. So this is the optional type class that you can take after the required type 1.
So did you just do one mock-up of this? Because I see you have some inserts for this.
I did 2. I did 1, and then I very gingerly cared for the second version that I created, just because I wanted, to save stuff. But for this designer, she is actually one of the first female streetwear designers, and she wants it to feel gritty in the same sense as what bolstered the DIY zine streetwear aesthetic in the 1980s when it was conceptualized. So for this, I was playing with a lot of bold and overlapping and very gritty.
Okay, nice.
And then for this designer, she really focused on embellishments and layering. So I wanted to try and use type in a way that would emulate her style. So this is the first type project, like Jackie showed, the Process magazine, and I panicked through this project.
Jackie and Marissa were in my class, so
I was like,
I can remember the panic well.
I was like so set on the grid was always the same, and that And then Abby said to me, why don't you think of type as you think of image making? I was like, what are you talking about? It's like totally two different things. And she was like, no, like at the end of the day, it's an image on the paper. It's just you're using type to make it. And it kind of clicked for me then that to look at the page as an overall composition, and while still keeping the rules of grids and hierarchy in mind.
It's great to look back on these and see kind of where, where you ended up. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's really interesting. Even like the overlapping that you did, and then how that spot, goes into other work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel this next project, I feel like, is similar in a way to the Process magazine, but growing through the program, I was able to streamline it a little more. So this is a catalog for a Richard Serra exhibit, a conceptual one. And Richard Serra is known for his work to be like so large in scale and kind of obtrusive when the viewer interacts with it. So I kind of wanted to try and emulate that through the use of the catalog. So I developed this newspaper catalog. So when you're interacting with it, it's really large and it's troublesome to interact with, but it engages the viewer that much more than a standard catalog shape. And because Richard Serra is a minimalist sculptor, I wanted to kind of draw inspiration from Swiss minimalism and typesetting. So that's why each page is kind of bare bones, stripping it down to type, information, and one or two images.
How is that attached? Is that attached at the top?
I glued it in, but when I had the newspaper printed, tipped it in. And having the newspaper printed, I just had like an extra sheet so I could cut it out in the same exact spot and tip it in. But it was a challenge for me to make something this minimal on the Richard Serra one, and using such drastic type sizes from the headers to the captions.
Your very first type project?
No, this was this I did after the Process magazine.
It's hard to see the scale because it really is, newspaper size.
And everyone forgets what that size is now because very few people purchase newspapers. So this is actually a illustration-heavy project. It's a reillustration of the children's book, The Phantom Tollbooth. So my main challenge with type in this project was finding a typeface that would pair properly with the illustrations that I developed for the story. So here I actually created that title type to complement the typefaces within the book, but mainly in terms of setting the type for the entire book, I wanted it to feel geometric and modern, but wouldn't compete in any way with the illustrations, which we see on the next page. Yeah.
Did you set this whole book? Yeah.
I set the whole book, yeah.
Did you produce the book too?
I did it the first time around, but after changes, this is just a digital mock-up of it.
Very nice.
But setting the whole book, it was really, like Abby was saying, in terms of working with copy that you have to keep. It was a nice learning experience in setting the whole book. I think it was 160 spreads.
160 spreads or 160 pages? Yeah, spreads. Okay.
Spreads. I like including illustrations and stuff like that. The original book, it was like probably maybe like it was a smaller book, but it was much more illustration heavy, and that was about 200 and something pages. So. And this project is probably my most experimental type project. It's a conceptual MTV retrospective, which focuses on the music itself. And since the first generation of videos that aired on MTV were new wave rock based, that was kind of my inspiration in drawing from new wave and Swiss type, looking at, you know, April Greiman and other graphic designers like that. And in terms of picking typefaces, MTV already had a brand system. On all of the videos that they aired, cable was the caption type, and then the original MTV logo has Helvetica as its byline copy face. So. And if we go to the next page, you'll see just really trying to experiment with how far you can push leading and tracking and so forth while still making it readable to the viewer.
And so what was your reference or your research on this? Were you looking at late 1980s and 1990s time?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it. Yeah. Just because they use like a lot of space in between their type and an atypical grid system. So trying to incorporate that into a catalog that was still readable was a fun challenge for me.
And you learned a lot.
I did learn a lot.
I mean, you learned a lot about music.
Yeah, I did this copy I wrote, so it was informative to say the least.
So you wrote all this, you did all this research. Wow.
Yeah.
See, I don't even know what my students are doing.
That's great.
Nice. I think that's the end of this show.
Thanks.
Okay, awesome.
That is. I'm gonna come back over here.
All right. So if you guys have any questions for either Abby or the students, feel free to put them under the question tab underneath, or you can throw them in the chat. I mean, we're having kind of a casual thing. So my questions for the students are, so what do you feel like were the most impressionable or effective projects that were given to you that you learned the most from?
I think the process mag to start, honestly, it was like we had to, working with copy that you couldn't really take away from, like set copy, and then really diving into the whole grid and hierarchy system was a nice trial and error.
Yeah.
Also, experience.
Like learning weird things like hanging quotation marks and like leading and stuff like that obviously we had no idea about before we took that class. Tables. We're like learning just how to like even set up grids and InDesign and just like learning the programs in general. Which like if we didn't have that knowledge, we would not be successful in the professional world because they would just be like, no, like, you need to know how to do this.
In our class, the students are also getting instruction in InDesign because you can't really teach, how to use type without using the tools too. But during that process magazine, there's a lot of time working in class, and I jump on their files all the time. Like, no, those aren't grids; those are guidelines. That's like the biggest thing you see. Yeah. So really getting on the computer and seeing it shows, you learn so much. Just, I'm sure, they'll say by me jumping on their computer and my hands are moving so fast, like, wait, what did you just do? But showing how I would do it, I think it helps.
Well, that is that is an aggressive first project in Type 1 to me, because it's not only learning hierarchy and setting type, and working with images on a page, but you're going to multi-pages. As a magazine, you're not necessarily doing flowing copy, so there's more decisions to be made. There's more chunking to be created. There's the spreads are going to be a little bit different, right? So you might have a grid system, but the grid system may be modular and translate from page to page or spread to spread. So that must have been a very challenging project for you. But
It was our last
It-
in that type class, or last of 3. So we were doing like
It was a build
works.
up.
Yeah, we were doing like we would learn how to do grids one week in a work, like homework, and then the next week we would learn how to like make master pages in InDesign, and then like towards the end of the semester we just learned.
Yeah, so that's like the exercise class. So they're doing little exercises that all kind of feed into, you know, you've now learned all these skills, now apply it all at once.
Right. Okay. So there's one portfolio project at the end, but you're doing exercises up. It's still an aggressive project for type 1.
Yeah. A little bit.
I have a question from Tia. I figure we'll just start answering them now. So Tia's asking, as an instructor, what is a big/common challenge that you see students struggle with in typography, and how do you go about helping?
What is it? There's so many challenges in type. Let me think of a good example of one. You know, type pairing is always a challenge, is finding out how to put 2 different distinct typefaces together well and why they work well together. And a lot of that really is looking at other work that's successful and figuring out what about those 2 typefaces, why did they work well together? Was one very decorative, one was, you know, very clean and basic, and having those big conversations about how to put the type pairs together. But I think that those exercises help, is kind of doing that on the small scale and trying to put together multiple pairs, not necessarily for a project, but just to see how they look together is how you kind of work through that problem.
Okay. Mostly type pairing. All right.
I mean, that's a big one. I mean, there's so much to type. Like, I can't tell you how many times I look at a page and I'm like, do you have a grid system? Are there 12 columns? What's your grid system? Like, I do. Let me see it. And they open it up. And they have just guidelines, and they just, you know, and I'm like, why aren't you using columns? I see that so much. I've seen that in MFA students. I mean, I see it professionally, but it's a funny thing that I don't know why making that switch to using columns could be really challenging.
Okay, so I'm going to close this question. Thank you, Tia. I hope that answered it. And then I'm going to jump on that with a little rant. so yeah, I think that a lot of times that what we see in education is sometimes the teachers are teaching mostly software, and then the typography follows, or they teach software in a way where it just supports the type or supports the project and not really talk about the most efficient or the best way to set up a file to ensure great typography, but rather than just match what you have sketched. And however you do it is fine. I mean, it's pretty much, if you look at the file, there's like 20 different text boxes, and there's like drawn lines all over the places, and they drag the grids out and whatnot. Although it's fine. Although we learned that, I don't know if you've learned this, Abby, when you send things to the printer, sometimes the printers will take your files, pick them up off of that page, and put them on other pages for recomposing, right? Sure. And so if you don't have it like really well built, they'll miss something, and you go to the proof and all of a sudden a line is missing or a paragraph is missing. That's because the printers are messing with your files. So if you don't build it correctly, they won't transfer it correctly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so hard too, because we all know this. We only see them for a certain amount of time, and there's so much to learn, you know? And there's so many fun things to learn. And while I love systems and organization, I don't know if everyone else has the same love as I do. And, you know, some of the stuff, I have this conversation with my colleagues. They're like, how do they not learn how to do that? I'm like, they learn. They're just not doing it because it's having to have that experience. You know, I remember my first job in New York, I put together a 244-page book. And while I thought I knew how to set type into style sheets, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I know why it was important. And so we always have that debate, like, you know, do you just want it to look great, or should they really know the right way to do it? Because hopefully, you know, if they get out and they don't, they work for someone that does, and that will, you know, be that mentor. On the flip side, a lot of those entry-level design positions, I want, when I hire a freelancer, I want to know they can set the type. You know, that's what you end up doing. And so even if they're not implementing what they learn, I know in their head they're like, this probably should be a master page. And maybe I'll Google that now and figure it out.
YouTube it. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. Way back in the day, we actually had to go to a bookstore and pick up a InDesign book, look them up, and follow the directions and try to figure it out. Yeah, but that's okay. Yeah. So what about advanced type? So you guys took an advanced type class. What are the things that bridge that? What are the skills that help bridge your, I don't know, right now you took, to begin, you have a required class, which is type 1, right? What does that advanced type give you that the type 1 did not?
It was like mostly building off of the foundation of principles that we learned, and being able to apply it in a grander scale than the process magazine. And StoodentDoc was kind enough to constantly bring in real life examples of successful type. So seeing it across like invitations and posters, catalogs, like pretty much wherever, types everywhere, but it's not something you always think about, that's types everywhere. So it's like, oh, you pick up an invitation. It's like, oh, here's information, but you don't realize what can go into that.
Yeah, I would think like the transition from type 1 to advanced type is where we go in and the professor thinks that we have the really basic knowledge. So now in advanced type, it's our responsibility to kind of push the basics, to go outside of like type norms and to try experimental layouts and making more sophisticated choices in the type that we're doing, and not just doing type because this is what we're told is how type should be set. I would say just like being trusted to do more.
Yeah. And outside of your type classes, did you also get reinforcement from your design teachers that you know about? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Type was probably the most critiqued, I think, out of everything, which I still think it's the most critiqued. Just even like if we were in a class, like a branding class, type in our logo or typefaces that we would use in these brandings just was talked about pretty heavily.
Okay. So can you tell if something is typeset well or not just by looking at it?
Yep. I think so. Yeah.
All the time I'll like walk across something and I'll double take and be like, wow, that's beautiful, or what were they thinking? And it's nice to have that constantly ingrained in your mind in terms of like existing and interacting with products and so forth.
And now in your first job in the studio that you're in, how much do you use type?
Pretty much it's all we've done so far.
Yeah.
I think a lot of branding and website layout, which like from start to finish we're using type.
Those are the types of projects that you guys are working on now in your job?
Yeah. Yeah, and packaging. So finding like type that works for packaging.
So do you feel like that everything that you learned at Tyler, it was enough to give you the skills, sorry, Abby, for this job? Or do you feel like there is anything that you missed?
No, I think we're pretty set.
Yeah, I think we are taught the basics really well, and I think realistically the basics are all you really need to know, and then from there it's just trial and error, and just as long as you're doing the traditional things right, then you should be good. Like as long as you're not doing prime marks instead of quotation marks, and you don't have really weird justification, and from there you can kind of just know. I think
we also learned a lot about appropriate applications for different types of type, in terms of, if you're doing it on a website, you don't want it to be 6-point and illegible and things like that. So even though it's now second nature for us, it's nice that it's nice that it has become second nature.
Mm-hmm. I'll throw in too about why I love my students. There's a really culture of just hard work pays off, and you don't become an expert, you don't learn the skills unless you try and fail and keep trying and trying. And luckily we've been able to kind of keep that going where everyone there is happy to be there. They love what they're doing. and they're working their little butts off. They do over and over and over. I mean, iteration, you have to keep doing it. You have to get that feedback, and you have to, work at it. So it's not like, it's just one way we're doing it. I just want to put it out there. They're doing their part and putting those hours in to gain the skills they need.
Well, I really appreciate getting a peek behind what's happening there. I mean, so there are a lot of notable alumni coming out of this department. Obviously, there's Jessica Hish and Joe Bosak, who we just spoke to a couple weeks ago. There are a lot of people who are coming out who have great type skills, even though they're not necessarily designing type or focusing on type. They're working on identities, they're working on websites or illustration, and yet the type still comes out spectacular. So it's good to know that you guys have a very, very strong work ethic in terms of type, and love to, keep watching what you guys are doing and producing. Now, I know that there's some alums in the group, so if you guys are an alum, please let us know that you are an alum. I know that I saw Kristen Hinckley is here. She's a MFA student there. I don't know if you remember Abby, but she is going to be working with you. She said she's there now, actually, with Yang Shen at Tyler.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be teaching them both next semester. So
awesome. Oh, so Nancy Mata, alumni grad student. Awesome, very good, cool, yay! It's great to see you guys. So
yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah,
it's fun to see these names.
Yeah, lovely. Awesome. And you started as a BFA, then MFA at Tyler. Awesome. Great. So what we want to do is what I want to do is keep focusing on type education throughout the summer. If you want to share, out your students and the students' work, let us know. I would love to interview you. Yeah. Yes. So Tyler is in Philly. It's at Temple University. Yes. And beautiful school, by the way, the gorgeous campus. I love walking around there.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky.
Very nice, yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Marissa and Jackie and Abby, of course. Definitely always great talking to you, Abby, whether it's public or private.
Thanks for having us, Rachel. This is awesome.
Thanks for having us.
All right, thanks for sharing. We'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.